He looked away for less than 3 seconds, and somehow that became the moment everyone started talking about. Not the speech, not the ceremony, not even Queen Letizia standing beside him. It was the fact that King Felipe suddenly broke eye contact at the exact moment Princess Leonor appeared emotional, and honestly, I think people immediately understood that something deeper was happening there. Because sometimes in royal families, the loudest thing is silence. And over the last 48 hours, that single moment has exploded across royal discussions online. People keep replaying it, slowing it down, analyzing facial expressions like it's the final scene of a political drama. But here's my hot take. I don't think Felipe looked away because he was cold. I think he looked away because he knew exactly what that moment meant. And maybe, he wasn't ready for it emotionally. That's the part one thing the headlines are completely missing. See, the media keeps framing these royal moments like they're perfectly scripted events. But when you really watch closely, especially recently, the Spanish royal family doesn't look scripted anymore. They look like people carrying the weight of transition in real time. And transition inside a monarchy is brutal. Because unlike normal families, royal families don't get to process emotions privately. Every glance becomes a headline. Every hesitation becomes a theory. Every tiny reaction becomes evidence. And I think that's exactly what happened here. The reason this moment hit people emotionally is because for a second, Felipe stopped looking like a king. He looked like a father realizing his daughter is slipping into a role that will change her forever. If you're new to Leonor's story, subscribe, I post every day. Now let's really talk about why this moment matters. Because I don't believe this was only about Leonor appearing emotional during a public event. I think it represented something much bigger that the palace itself may be struggling to manage. Leonor is no longer being viewed as the future. She's becoming the present, and that changes the energy completely inside royal institutions. You can actually see it in the way international media now covers her. The headlines aren't introducing her anymore. They're evaluating her, judging her, comparing her to established royals across Europe. That's a huge psychological shift. And honestly, I think Felipe understands the cost of that better than anyone. Because he watched it happen to himself. People forget this sometimes, but Felipe spent years balancing the expectations of the crown while trying to repair the reputation of the monarchy after difficult periods in Spain. He understands pressure in a way most people probably never will. So when he looks at Leonor now, I honestly think he sees two things at once. His daughter, and the institution preparing to consume her identity piece by piece. That's devastating if you think about it long enough. And maybe that's why he looked away. Not because he didn't care, but because he cared too much. You know what fascinates me most about modern royal families? The public still expects them to behave like symbols while simultaneously demanding they feel emotionally relatable. Those two things completely contradict each other. We want authenticity, but only controlled authenticity. And the moment real emotion slips through, the internet goes wild. That's exactly what happened here. What's interesting is how differently younger audiences reacted compared to traditional royal commentators. Older royal coverage focused on protocol, timing, formality, but online, people focused entirely on emotion. The look on Leonor's face, Philippe's reaction, the silence between them. That's the new monarchy now. Emotion is the headline. And honestly, Spain's royal family is adapting to this emotional era faster than many people realize. Look at the contrast for a second. While Prince William and Catherine in Britain still project that polished, future king and queen image, Leonor's public identity is becoming something rougher around the edges, more personal, more vulnerable, more grounded in pressure and duty. And I think that's intentional. Because in 2026, audiences don't trust perfection anymore. Perfection feels filtered, manufactured, PR tested, but emotional discomfort, that feels real. And real is what wins attention now. If Mr. Beast were analyzing royal media strategy, and honestly this sounds funny but hear me out, he'd probably say emotional tension creates stronger audience retention than flawless presentation. That's literally how modern storytelling works now. Conflict, vulnerability, transformation, and the Spanish monarchy suddenly has all three happening at once through Leonor's rise. But here's where I think the story becomes heartbreaking. I don't think Felipe's reaction came from weakness. I think it came from recognition. Because fathers sometimes realize things before the world does. There's a specific kind of sadness when you understand your child is stepping into a life they can never fully escape from. And monarchy is exactly that. People talk about privilege constantly, the titles, the ceremonies, the status. But they rarely talk about the psychological isolation of growing up under permanent observation. Imagine every awkward phase of your life becoming international discussion. Every expression analyzed, every friendship questioned, every mistake archived forever online. Leonor didn't choose public fascination. She inherited it. And lately, I think Felipe has started realizing the world is no longer watching Leonor as a protected princess. They're watching her as a future queen under evaluation. That's different, much harsher. There was another subtle detail recently that caught my attention too. Felipe has looked increasingly careful during appearances involving Leonor. Not distant, careful, and I think people misread that. Because kings are trained to control emotion publicly. But sometimes restraint itself becomes emotional. That's the contradiction royal families constantly live with. The more they suppress vulnerability, the more visible it accidentally becomes. And honestly, I think this explains why certain palace appearances lately feel emotionally heavier than before. You can sense the transition happening. Not officially, not through announcements, but emotionally. Leonor's role is expanding rapidly, and everyone around her knows there's no turning back now. That reality changes family dynamics. It changes how parents look at their children, how advisors behave, how the media frames every interaction. And I think Philippe's moment of looking away symbolized all of that in 1 second. Because maybe for a brief moment, he stopped seeing the cameras. Maybe he simply saw his daughter under pressure. And honestly, that humanizes him more than any royal speech ever could. This is where I think modern monarchy is becoming almost impossible to manage perfectly. The palace wants stability, the media wants drama, the public wants authenticity. Those three things constantly fight each other. And Leonor is standing directly in the center of that storm right now. That's why every small moment around her suddenly feels bigger than it should. People aren't just watching a princess anymore. They're watching the emotional evolution of an entire institution through one young woman. That's why these clips spread so fast online. It's not because viewers care about protocol. It's because they recognize human emotion instantly. And, ironically, the more emotional these royal moments become, the stronger Leonor's public connection grows. That's the hidden shift happening in Europe right now. The younger generation doesn't connect to monarchy through tradition alone anymore. They connect through emotional realism. Through visible pressure. Through imperfection. Through vulnerability. And I think Felipe understands that better than many royal advisors do. Which makes this entire moment even sadder. Because maybe the devastating reason Felipe looked away wasn't disappointment, wasn't tension, wasn't palace conflict. Maybe it was acceptance. Acceptance that Leonor is entering a phase of royal life where even he can no longer protect her from what the crown eventually takes from people: privacy, simplicity, and the ability to exist without constant judgment. And once you start looking at that moment through that lens, his reaction suddenly doesn't feel cold at all. It feels painfully human.